These are 19 lessons from this book, The Psychology of Money, that, and I'm not exaggerating, changed my financial life by changing the way I view money, and I bet it will change yours too. The truth is, I always thought I was pretty rational with money after spending over 15 years in finance, training to be an accountant, working as an investment analyst, but boy was I wrong. The first one is, no one is crazy. People have different attitudes towards money. That's based on their background, their parents' attitudes to money, their own attitude to risk, their culture, their own upbringing. All of this feeds into how they view money and how it fits into their lives. And I look at my own experiences. I started university during the peak of the financial crisis, when trillions were being wiped from people's pensions, millions lost their home, and even more millions lost their jobs. So it'd be perfectly understandable for someone who is my age to view investing as being super risky. But the book summarises this really nicely with this quote: "Every decision people make with money is justified by taking the information they have at that moment and plugging it into their unique mental model of how the world works." But it's also true to say that some people have their own views about money, but they also want money to do different things for them. Maybe they have no interest in fast cars and big houses, but instead are more interested in a modest lifestyle with an earlier retirement and spending time with their family instead of spending all their money. The second point is, compounding is magic. Albert Einstein said it best: compounding is the most powerful force in the universe. So let's say you take $1,000 and invest it into the S&P 500, making an average return of 10% per year. By year 2, you'll have $1,100, then $1,210, then $1,331, then $1,464, then $1,610. You get where I'm going with this. And here's the thing, when you plot this over a longer time period, the incremental amount that you make each year grows, but most importantly, the rate it grows at is faster every single year. And the book uses Warren Buffett as an example. Here's what I mean. Warren Buffett's net worth, as at the time of recording this video, is $142.6 billion. But what most people underestimate is that 99% of his wealth was accumulated after his 50th birthday. So whilst he is undoubtedly a phenomenal stock picker and a fantastic investor, the Oracle of Omaha is also 94 years old, started investing at the age of 11 in 1942. So the best way you can take advantage of the most powerful force in the universe for your finance is to start as early as possible. The earlier you start, the more of the heavy lifting that compound interest can do for you. Next is getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. And that's the skills that you need to make money are not the same as the skills that you need to make sure that you hold on to that money. In some respects, it's never been easier to make money. The internet has opened up a vast wormhole where you can sell anything to anyone in the world from the comfort of your pajamas. And there's another good quote in the book about this. Getting money requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires humility and the fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just as fast. Which leads me on to my next point. Negativity sells. Whilst it may have never been easier to make money, at the same time it has also never been harder to hold on to your money. The doom economy trying to trick you into sensationalist headlines, trying to grab your eyeballs, the social media machine cranking up a gear every single year, trying to come up with new ways of grabbing your attention and convince you to buy more shit you just don't need. And there's plenty of empirical literature on this too. This paper measured brain activity in people consuming negative news on social media. They found that people exhibit stronger cognitive and emotional responses when exposed to negative news stories. It literally shows up on their brain scans. This study found that negative news articles, especially those with emotionally charged or alarming headlines, are shared more frequently than positive or informative news stories. It's the old expression of "if it bleed, it leads" mantra, that more shocking and sensationalist content is more likely to get engagement from people than positive news or informative content. The best use of money? Buy time. One of the topics that the book covers in detail is something that I would say not enough books in this area do, which is summarised in this quote rather nicely. Money's greatest intrinsic value, and this cannot be overstated, is the ability to give you control over your time. Using your money to buy time and options has lifestyle benefits few luxury goods can compete with. And this is the important point. Plenty of books tell you how to make money, start a business, learn a skill, be a seller. But what do you do when you have the money? Well, I think using some of that money you've made to buy back your time is a fabulous investment. And in another video where we covered this book, one of the things that the book talks about is the amount of money you make isn't explicitly linked to how happy you are. Depending on how you measure it, it's normally in the region of between $70,000 and $80,000 a year. Beyond that, the returns are diminished. And one of the topics that we cover in the book is that the number one regret of people who are at their deathbeds was that they spent too much time working and away from their family. How many people would say, "Oh, you know what, I wish I'd worked more and spent less time with my family"? Link for the review of this book is just here and will be at the end of the video. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time, so swapping money in exchange for time seems like a worthwhile deal. Reasonable over rational. You and I are not some economic robots, pre-programmed by AI in order to make the most calculated and by-the-numbers economic and financial decisions. Instead, we're humans, and that's basically the whole point of the book, if we're honest. And included in that, you should always be very honest with yourself about your own relationship with money and what good money decisions look like for you. Here's an example. The average return of investing in the S&P 500 is about 10% per year, but the average mortgage rate's around 4 or 5%. So in theory, the economically rational thing to do would be to never pay off your mortgage, knowing that the return you could make on that money is greater than the interest it costs you to borrow that money. But how nice would it feel to remove that pressure of a monthly mortgage repayment and owning your own home, removing your single biggest fixed living expense, knowing that you're not wasting money on interest? We have a video coming out next week on this very topic, so subscribe so you don't miss out. You need to optimize not just for what might be economically correct or mathematically optimal, what is going to help you feel as though you are enjoying your life without compromising your longer term money goals. Luck and risk know the difference. I think it's perfectly reasonable to assess that all success is a combination of a whole plethora of factors: your unfair advantage, your skills, your work ethic, and also luck. There is no point being a dynamite tech developer if you were born during the Roman Empire. James Cameron, famed film director, liked deep sea diving, so he decided to make a movie about it, and the original $100 million budget for the movie swelled to well over $200 million. So he agreed to return his $8 million directing salary in exchange for a cut of the box office proceeds. This single move netted him about $650 million. That movie was obviously Titanic, which went on to gross over $2 billion. And it's easy to look back at that as skill, but who would have known that a film about a sinking boat would have gone on to become one of the highest grossing movies in history to this day, despite being released nearly 30 years ago. Make sure you take advantage of your good luck, but also appreciate it. The man in the car paradox. You might imagine that driving around in a fancy car is going to make people respect you, like you, respect your success, the lifestyle that your money allows you to have, and the hard work that you might have put into your career. But the truth is that's almost never the case. Think about it. How many times when you see a nice car driving down the street do you look at the person driving the car rather than the car itself? People don't admire the person with the nice car or the big house, they're just admiring the nice car or the big house, and the person inside, meh. But being a petrol head myself, I would like to add this caveat. If you drive a nice car, do it because you want to, because you enjoy the engineering or you like the brand. Don't drive it because you're trying to impress people who you might not even like. Be a decorator. So I was getting a room in our house decorated a little while ago, and the decorator told me that decoration is 90% preparation, 10% decoration. That the bit that takes a whole lot of time is moving the furniture out of the way, taping up the light fixtures, covering the carpet, and the actual painting is kind of the quickest part. So what does this tell you about your finances? Well, having a plan for your finances and for your retirement is no bad thing, and you should be able to set up your investment accounts and then, if we follow this example, leave it to dry. Plan, plan, plan. This interconnected global economy that we're all reaping the benefits of and having to anticipate the risks can be unpredictable. Whether it's conflict, storms, housing meltdowns, stock market dips, natural disasters, pandemics, having a plan for your finances is key. The level of detail you attach to your plan is very much up to you, and again, your relationship with money, and what you want your financial outcome to be. This is things like having an emergency fund, having a budget that has some flex built into it. That's living within your needs, not within your means. That's not being overly leveraged. You don't want to spend your time obsessing about every single possible outcome. You just want your financial plan to be as simple as possible and as bulletproof as possible. Thick financial armour is nice to have. But having said that, since even the best laid plans go awry, room for error. Listen, you can make the best plan, accounting for every conceivable variable, managing down every single risk, having a contingency plan on top of your contingency plan. But the truth of the matter is that things are still going to go wrong. So what's the solution, you might be screaming? Well, the easiest thing to do is to have a built-in contingency or margin of error. But there's an important point. Your margin of error should be twofold. Firstly, financial. If you want to retire at 60, then save like you're going to retire at 55, and that gives you a 5-year buffer. Want to build an emergency fund and you think 3 months will be sufficient? Try 6 months instead. A bank will lend you 5 times your salary for your mortgage, maybe only borrow 4 or 4.5. And the second is being emotionally prepared, knowing that if you want to reduce your hours to focus on building a side hustle, that your paycheck is going to be smaller. Being okay with knowing that you're taking a short-term risk for a longer-term outcome. That's a real psychological play. It's being prepared for these individual circumstances which cumulatively can really help you build a more robust financial plan, ensuring that you're prepared for virtually any probable outcome. Recognize enough. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalposts to stop moving. If you can't satisfy yourself and be happy with enough, then you'll spend the rest of your life on a constant treadmill trying to keep up with the feeling of fulfillment. And let's be honest, making social comparisons to people that, if you're honest, you probably don't like anyway. So decide what is going to be enough for you by identifying the things that are most important to you and how you need to get there. what do you have to do? But just so we're super clear, I don't want people to think that I'm encouraging mediocrity or that I'm throwing cold water on people's ambition. Far from it. If you have an ambitious goal and you recognise that it will require blood, sweat and tears, then by all means, I wish you the best on your quest. But when you get to the highest mountain, just enjoy the view. Tails you win. You know, a lot of things in the business and investing world are fascinating, but one of the fascinating things are called long tails. The distant ends of the distribution outcomes hold tremendous sway in finance. It's here in this minuscule number of events that can account for the majority of outcomes. But here's a practical example. Imagine this. Most public companies are duds, and just a few do well, and that handful become extraordinary winners that account for the majority of the stock market's returns. Take a look at the recent run of AI stocks or tech stocks over the last decade and you start to see what I mean. So when you embrace the idea that tails drive absolutely everything in business, investing and finance, you find it perfectly normal for many things to go wrong, for some things to fail. It's all part of the cost of investing. Speaking of costs, nothing's free. Everything has a price, and the key to a lot of things with money is just figuring out what the price is. The problem invariably is that the price of many things is not that obvious until you've really experienced it. Let's look at a practical example. Hold stocks in the long term. You'll hear that all the time and it's perfectly sound advice. But do you know how hard it is to maintain a long-term outlook when stock prices might be absolutely tanking? Like everything else worthwhile, successful investing demands a price. But its currency is not dollars and cents, it's volatility, fear, doubt, uncertainty, all of which are easy to overlook until you're used to dealing with them in real time. Ultimately, volatility is the price you have to pay in order to invest. There's no such thing as risk-free investing. And just before anyone says, oh, just put it in a savings account, there's a cost to that too, perhaps the gravest cost of all, that by putting your money in a savings account, gradually over time the value of that money will be eroded by inflation. So whilst the nominal value might not decrease, in real terms, it's making you worse off. The next point is, wealth is what you don't see. The only way to build wealth is to not spend it. This applies up and down the income scale. To me, someone who is financially free is someone whose passive income is less than their cash burn rate. And so it's perfectly possible that someone who makes millions a year but has a house in the Hamptons, endless child support payments, private school tuition, a flat in the city, is less financially free than a middle-class retiree who has money in their retirement account and a low cash burn. This is especially problematic for younger generations, and I include myself in that characterization. Social media is someone's personal propaganda. Everyone has photos of themselves in Dubai eating garish steaks with gold on and all that. But how many of those same people would show an unpaid credit card bill, being neck deep in their overdraft, or not being able to pay their rent this month? Sometimes I think it's fair to say that money screams and wealth whispers. Play your own game. Here's the truth. It's long been the view of this channel that not everyone wants to be rich. Not everyone wants a house in Ibiza, a flat in Mayfair, a Rolls on the Drive, all that bullshit. But some people do. But riddle me this. If you're playing basketball and your friend is playing tennis, why are you comparing scores? It's easy to assume that when it comes to money, we're all playing the same game, abiding by the same rules, thinking about the same things, driving towards the same outcome. But the reality is nothing could be further from the truth. And what rich means for people can be wildly different. That means that the money game that you're playing is completely different as well. Again, from the book, beware taking financial cues from people who are playing a different game than you are. Investing doesn't have to be complex. Now, I have a lot of sympathy with this. When you start your investing journey, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed with the plethora of options available to you. Stocks, bonds, pensions, real estate, taxes, yourself, a business. And invariably people end up with an analysis paralysis situation which terrifies them, so they put it off. Again, and as we've discussed, starting early can be a really key advantage. But the truth is, for the vast majority of people, it should be simple. The simplest, easiest, most effective and cheapest way to start investing is by opening up a tax-advantaged account, the ISA in the UK or the Roth in the US, and investing in diversified low-cost index funds. These funds will basically always beat the much more expensive managed funds, who will also charge you through the nose in fees. This has been studied time and time again. Keep it simple, stupid. You'll change. You can't approach your finances knowing exactly how things are going to pan out, what your life is going to look like, and what your priorities are going to be. And you should change. More importantly, you should want to change. But this can make planning for your finances very difficult. Luckily, this book has an answer to that too. Quote, "We should avoid the extreme ends of financial planning. assuming you'll be happy to work with a very low income or choosing to work endless hours in pursuit of a high one increases the odds that one day you'll find yourself at a point of regret. So I've always said revisiting a plan is a perfectly acceptable thing to do to make sure that the plan can get you to your new life as and when it changes. But making credit commitments can really limit your options in later life, which is a nice segue to this one. Avoid extreme financial commitments. Let's be honest, do your future self a favour and don't walk around with a financial anchor around your neck. Some of the financial choices I've always encouraged people to really consider very carefully are long-term financial commitments. The big ones are things like loans for weddings, mortgages, car payments. These are massive, massive credit commitments that can end up costing you tens or hundreds of thousands and historically can be some of the hardest to get out of. And that's basically down to two main reasons. The amounts involved are often substantial, so you can't just have the cash readily available to pay off the full amount. And in some cases, like car loans or lease cars, the contracts can be pretty ironclad. And the truth is, outside of the 28-day cooling off period, the fees to get out of these arrangements can be pretty hard work. And also, historically, people are pretty bad at deciding what kind of life they want to live in future anyway, either because they change their mind or because circumstances force them to change their mind. We've always maintained on this channel that it's not being super smart, being a risk taker or a budget planner or anything like that which will ultimately determine your overall success with money. It is the consistent application of good financial habits. No one ever got into shape by going to the gym and working out for 24 hours straight, but plenty of people got fit by consistently walking 10,000 steps, lifting weights a couple of times a week, eating a balanced diet, and your finances are no different. We mentioned that we did a review of this book by Robert Waldinger. Watch this video just here for that. It's a really helpful and an incisive book which I would really encourage you to watch the video and then decide to read. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. We're a growing finance channel and it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe and you can always unsubscribe later. Thanks very much for watching.